They have to realize that their legs are shaking, their heart is racing, that now the game is on. And they have to, in that moment, practice the very formula that we've taught them in a circumstance that is challenging them to be greater than their environment, to be greater than their body and the response of the body, and not rush through it, but to master the moment in time. And when people start to do this and they settle their brain and body down, something amazing happens. All of a sudden now, they go further than they normally thought they could go. And when they return back to their lives, they will be less prone to react to the same circumstances. They'll be more conscious because they were conscious in that process. And if they've just done that at 45 feet in the air and they return back to their life and they see a circumstance relative to what they just did, they're going to see this as a much less of a challenge in their environment, and they're going to catch themselves and not go unconscious. And in that moment, self-regulate. And I said to my community, when all this happened, hey, all of this training is for now. This is game time. This is where it matters the most. You have to be able to be greater than your emotions, greater than your habits, greater than trying to predict the familiar future, remembering the past, and to be greater than the conditions in your environment. And that means then that we have to step out of the philosophical role into the practical role. And what a great opportunity to move to a greater level of consciousness, a greater level of awareness. And that means that you can't see yourself as victimized or limited.
And so this is kind of a great example of what, you know, kind of that moment where you're 50 feet up, where people can look about this as something that's, you know, a lot of people are potentially going to die and it's dangerous and all that. And this is where they could practice focusing and going against all their normal reactions from thousands of years of programming, which is to retreat and contract and be in fear, and to try to practice being, I think as you call it in the past, the generous present moment, and trying to focus on the gratitude and the love. And this is some of the things you've been teaching people lately, some of these meditations that allow them to do that. Is that right?
Sure. I mean, in my response to creating a greater level of awareness for people, I ran right down to the studio and said, okay, let's cut 2 meditations. Let's create a meditation for people before they go to sleep at night. The last thing they do is to get in touch with elevated emotions and allow the understanding that if the environment signals the gene, and it does, and the end product of an experience in your environment is an emotion, that when you start embracing elevated emotions, your body is so objective. It's the unconscious mind. It does not know the difference between the actual event that's creating that emotion and the emotion that you're fabricating by thought alone. So the body is believing it's living in a new environment, and in fact, you are signaling the gene ahead of the environment, and your inner environment of your body is getting that chemical that's oxytocin and dopamine and vasopressin and all the wonderful chemicals, nitric oxide, are causing energy to move into your heart, and it's the time to repair. And your body gets that signal. It's going to make sense that if you practice this, you're strengthening your inner army. By the same means, this center where our adrenals are, people think it's a bad center, and it's not. It's your center where you willfully empower outcomes in your life, and you want to activate this center and create some energy, and then move that energy into your heart, and then understand that you can empower the power within, and practicing that every day and feeling empowered and feeling strength and feeling invincible, feeling an uncompromising will. You don't think that those chemicals have an influence on your body, but if people have been conditioned and hypnotized into believing that something in their outer world has to change their inner world, whether it's a substance, whether it's a product, whether it's something you consume or you buy, or some government or some whatever it is, if you're waiting for something out there to change your inner state, and you've been conditioned and programmed your whole entire life that you need something out there to change how you feel in here, then when situations get a little bit challenging and there's nothing out there that's going to change that feeling inside of you, this is game time now. This is the moment you realize, I'm going to have to change my inner state. independent of the conditions in my outer environment, and understand that there's science to actually show that you can. So some people would say, well, I'm just going to wait for this or I'm going to wait for that. Well, those are the people that spend their whole life in separation and lack, waiting for their environment to change to feel gratitude. We're saying once you understand the what and the why, then the next question is, why don't you do it? Why not have the experience and understand the how? So if the research is there, and not only the evidence that we have in all of the scientific tests that we've done with common people, but there's testimony. There are people that have healed themselves of crazy, crazy health conditions that show us that there is a new consciousness emerging. It is that 4-minute mile where you pierce through a layer of consciousness that is human limitation. And now all of a sudden, just like the 4-minute mile being broken, this is a new consciousness. People are healing from stage 4 cancers. They're healing from all different kind of health conditions, because every day they assign meaning to what they're doing. They're in the game, and every moment matters for them. They're overcoming, and every time they overcome, they're starting to become somebody else. And yeah, it's not easy all the time. I can tell you that from experience. But I don't know any other alternative that's going to empower people to realize how powerful they really are. So I want to create meditations that are important for people in this time, whether it's empowering the power within or falling into love with your body. I want people not to just do it mindlessly. I want them to understand when they do that and why they do that is going to help them to understand how to surrender to the process and understand that they become more unlimited as a result of it.
As usual, Joe, you're just blowing me away, and I'm just trying to process this stuff in my mind, because most of us, I was about to say in the Western world, but most of us in this world are constantly thinking, when I get X, then I'll be happy, right? When I get the promotion, when I get the pair of shoes, when I get married, when I make the $1 million, when it's this external things that's gonna make us happy. And yet there's other people that say you can be happy right now, and that's kind of what you're saying. And also the reality in your brain directly affects your physiology. And so it's the opposite of kind of what we're taught. I mean, growing up as well. And I mean, in America, in a consumer society, it's always kind of like, you got to get this to get this. And this is looking at this from a completely different angle.
Well, let's talk about that, because this is essential to understanding whether we create our life matter to matter in separation, or we actually create from the field, from a frequency of energy, to begin to produce effects in three-dimensional reality in the material world. So you and I have been trained to pay attention in a certain way. Tie your shoe, watch the stairs, watch the car. You could fall down and break your neck. And the alarm of paying attention as a kid causes us to narrow our focus on the material world. We narrow our focus on physical things. And when the arousal of those emergency chemicals are heightened, it causes our senses to become heightened. And the very fact of becoming materialists causes us to experience three-dimensional reality in separation. In other words, everything physical, whether it's an object, a place, a person, a body, whatever it is, we experience through our senses. And I'm here and you're there. And there's space between us. And if there's space between us, there's time between us. And so if I'm here in three-dimensional reality and I say I want to go to my car, I have to become aware that I'm here. That's one point of awareness. And my car is another point of awareness. So I'm separate from my car. So now I get up and I move my body through space. And when I move through space, I experience time. If I want to shorten the time, I move faster. If I want to lengthen the time, I move slower. So then there's me here, and then people have their dreams, whatever they are, their wealth, their health, their freedom. And in their mind, because they understand the process of getting things, they say, okay, I'm going to get that new house. And they start dreaming about that new house. And then they say, okay, how am I going to get that house? Okay, I'm going to work more hours. I'm going to sacrifice and save these things. I'm going to do more of this. I'm going to work on the weekends. And they're figuring it out as a predictable matter-to-matter outcome. And so they're living in lack and separation because they place their dreams 2 years, 5 years, 10 years in the future based on what they know about themselves and accomplishing it in the past.